My wife told me she was working late for 3 months. Same tired voice, same rushed kiss on the cheek, same line every time. Don't wait up. And like an idiot, I believed her. I believed the late-night meetings. I believed the emergency deadlines. I believed the extra projects. Until the night I followed her, and when I saw whose driveway she pulled into, everything inside me went cold. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I didn't lose control. Because in that moment, I realized something. The woman I had been protecting had already destroyed our marriage. And before it was over, she was going to learn exactly what it costs to lie to someone who loved you for real. Stay with me, because what I found that night was only the beginning. My name is Mason Carter, and for 11 years I thought I had a solid marriage. Not perfect, not movie perfect, but real. We had a house in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio, a golden retriever named Scout, a joint savings plan, Sunday grocery trips, shared coffee in the mornings, the kind of life that doesn't look flashy online, but feels like it's supposed to last. My wife, Claire Carter, was the kind of woman people admired instantly. Smart, polished, impossible not to notice when she walked into a room. She worked as a project coordinator for a mid-sized construction consulting firm downtown. I worked in commercial insurance. Stable job, stable life, stable routine. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, I can see the shift started small. It always starts small. Claire became distant in ways that were easy to excuse. She stopped laughing at the stupid jokes I'd been telling for years. She started keeping her phone face down on the kitchen counter. Her showers got longer. Her perfume changed. She bought new dresses for client dinners, though she had always hated dressing up for work. Then came the phrase that would eventually poison everything. I'm working late. At first it was once a week, then twice. Then so often I stopped asking. If I called her around 7, she'd decline and text me back 10 minutes later. In a meeting, still at the office. Talk later. And every time I questioned it, she had an answer ready. You know how quarter end is. My boss is under pressure. You're overthinking. Why are you acting paranoid? That last one hit the hardest. Because when someone says you're paranoid enough times, you start to distrust your own instincts, even when your gut is screaming. There were nights she came home exhausted, but strangely glowing. Nights she walked in past 10, kicked off her heels, and barely looked at me. Nights I'd warm up dinner and she'd tell me she already ate with coworkers. Coworkers. That word started sounding like a code I wasn't allowed to crack. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. Because once you stop believing your spouse, the whole house changes. The walls feel colder. The bed feels bigger. Even silence sounds suspicious. So I did what a lot of husbands do when they're scared of the truth. I told myself it was stress. I told myself marriage goes through phases. I told myself not to ruin something good over nothing. But deep down, I already knew. And the worst part, I think she knew I knew. She just thought I'd never prove it. That was her mistake. The first real crack came on a Thursday. It was raining hard that night. I remember because the windows were rattling from the wind, and Claire texted me around 6:18 p.m., running late again. Major issue with a client file. Don't wait for dinner. Same words. Same script. I was halfway through reheating leftovers when Scout started barking at the front window. I looked outside and saw my neighbor Jenna Morales, standing under an umbrella with a package in her hands. I opened the door, and she smiled. Hey, this got dropped at our porch by mistake. I thanked her, and we stood there talking for a second. Then she said something so casually, so harmlessly that it changed everything. Your wife got home late again? I frowned. She's not home. Jenna blinked. Oh, I thought I saw her car near the subdivision entrance around 5:30. The package nearly slipped out of my hand. You sure? Pretty sure, she said. Same white Lexus, right? I forced a nod and laughed it off like it meant nothing. But the second I shut the door, my heartbeat started pounding in my ears. 5:30. Claire had texted me at 6:18 saying she was still working. Maybe Jenna was mistaken. Maybe it was another car. Maybe I was spiraling. But that night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling while Claire lay beside me, breathing evenly like a woman with nothing to hide. Around 2 a.m., she shifted in her sleep and turned toward me, resting one hand on my arm. That should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like a stranger touching me in the dark. The next morning, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the bathroom counter. I wasn't trying to snoop. That's the lie betrayed people tell themselves right before they do exactly that. The screen lit up with a name. Derek. No last name. Just Derek. And the preview message said, "Last night was worth every risk." I felt like the floor disappeared under me. I didn't open the phone. I didn't need to. My entire body went numb in that weird, terrifying way where your mind is racing but your hands go cold. She came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, steam behind her, and smiled at me like nothing had happened. "You okay?" she asked. I looked her right in the face and said, "Yeah, just tired." That was the moment I stopped being her husband and started becoming the man who was going to uncover every single lie. If you think the text message was the worst part, it wasn't. The worst part was how easy she made it look. I didn't confront her right away. That's what she expected. A fight, a shouted accusation, a desperate husband grabbing at half-proof. No, I needed the truth so clean she couldn't twist it. So over the next week, I paid attention. Real attention. I watched how quickly she responded to some texts and ignored others. I noticed she took her phone into every room now, even when she just went to refill her water. I saw how her mood improved every time she got ready to stay late. I also found out who Derek was. Derek Holloway, senior operations manager at her company. Divorced. 41. Expensive haircut. The kind of guy who smiled like he had already decided what everyone in the room was worth. Claire had mentioned him before, but only in passing. Derek's impossible. Derek changed the deadline. Derek wants revisions. Now I understood why his name kept coming up. Because he wasn't just her boss. He was her excuse. One Saturday afternoon, Claire said she had to stop by the office for a quick planning session. She left in a silk blouse and enough perfume to turn a hallway into memory. The office parking lot was nearly empty when I drove past. Her car wasn't there. But about 15 minutes later, I saw it. Parked 2 blocks away outside a coffee shop. And through the front window, there she was. Not in a meeting, not at work, not with a team. She was sitting across from Derek, smiling the way she used to smile at me when we were dating. He reached across the table and touched her hand. And she let him. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles ached. I wanted to run inside. I wanted to drag the truth into the open right there. I wanted to ask her how many times she had looked into my face and lied without flinching. But anger can make you reckless, and recklessness would have helped her. So, I stayed still. I watched them leave together 40 minutes later. I watched her glance around before getting into his black SUV. I watched him drive away with my wife in the passenger seat like she belonged there. That image did something permanent to me. Because suspicion hurts. But confirmation? Confirmation is surgery without anesthesia. That night, Claire came home around 9. She was relaxed, light, almost cheerful. "How was your day?" she asked. I stared at her for 2 full seconds before answering. "Quiet." She nodded, went to the fridge, and started talking about a fake office issue with such calm detail that I almost admired the performance. Almost. That was the night I made my decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to compete. And I definitely wasn't going to let her rewrite the story later. If this marriage was ending, it was ending in the truth. And I was going to be ready. The night everything blew open happened 2 weeks later. It was a Tuesday. Claire left the house at 7:10 that morning, kissed Scout on the head, ignored me, and headed to work. Around 5:40 p.m., she sent the usual text. Another late one. Audit prep. Don't wait up. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I grabbed my keys. This time, I didn't drive past the office first. I drove straight to Derek Holloway's condo complex on the north side. I didn't know the exact unit, but I knew his address from a public property record search I'd done the day before. I parked across the street where the trees gave enough cover, then waited. At 6:27 p.m., Claire's white Lexus turned into the lot. No hesitation, no confusion, no circling. She pulled in like she'd been there 100 times. Because she probably had. I watched her step out of the car, smooth down her skirt, glance once at her reflection in the window, and walk toward Building C with a familiarity that shattered the last weak piece of denial left in me. 5 minutes later, Derek opened the door from inside. He didn't greet her like a coworker. He pulled her in by the waist and kissed her before the door even fully closed. That was it. That was the moment. The final proof. The final insult. The final death of every promise she had ever made to me. My whole body went cold, then hot. I walked across the street, up the sidewalk, through the entryway, and to Derek's unit. I knocked once, hard. The room inside went silent. Then I knocked again, this time louder. After a few seconds, the door opened halfway. Derek stood there in a t-shirt, expression tight, pretending confusion. "Can I help you?" I looked past him. Claire was standing in the living room, barefoot, frozen. Her face lost all color. "Mason." I held up one hand. Not to threaten, not to stop her. Just because I didn't want to hear a single word until I was ready. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then I said, calm enough to scare even myself, "So this is where working late happens." Claire started crying, instantly. Not from guilt, from panic. There's a difference, and once you've seen it, you never unsee it. "Mason, please let me explain." Derek stepped forward, like he was going to control the situation in his own house. "Look, man, this isn't the place." I turned to him so fast he stopped talking. "No," I said. "You don't get to tell me what place this is." Then I looked at Claire. "How long?" She shook her head, crying harder. "It's not what you think." I laughed. Actually laughed. Because there are moments when a lie is so pathetic it stops being painful and becomes offensive. You're barefoot in his condo. Silence. "How long?" I asked again. Claire covered her mouth. Derek looked away. That told me everything. Months. Not a mistake. Not one night. Not confusion. A second life. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and snapped one picture. Claire flinched. "What are you doing?" "Documenting the truth," I said. Then I looked at both of them and delivered the sentence I had been building toward without even knowing it. "You two deserve each other." And I walked out. No screaming. No violence. No begging. Just the kind of silence that leaves damage long after the door closes. But if Claire thought getting caught was the consequence, she still had no idea what was coming next. People always imagine revenge as something loud. A scene. A public meltdown. Broken glass. Police lights. That's fantasy. Real consequences are quieter, sharper. They arrive in paperwork, in truth, in the irreversible collapse of the life someone thought they could keep while betraying you. The next morning, I called a lawyer. By lunch, I had copies of our financial records, mortgage documents, and every account tied to both our names. By evening, I had opened a new checking account in mine. By Friday, I had legal advice, documented evidence, and a full plan. I didn't drain everything. I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't play dirty. I played smart. Claire came home the night I caught her around midnight. I was sitting in the kitchen with the lights off except for the one above the stove. She looked wrecked. Eyes swollen. Makeup gone. Voice trembling. "Mason, please, we need to talk." I nodded toward the chair across from me. "Sit," she sat. For the first time in months, she looked afraid of me. Not because I was dangerous. Because I was done. She started with the usual lines. "It just happened." I was confused. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I still care about you," I let her speak. Then I asked, "Did you love him?" She froze. That question mattered more than any other one. Not because the answer would save anything, but because lies collapse when you force them into specifics. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know." I nodded slowly. "That's enough." Then I slid a folder across the table. Inside were divorce papers. Her hands started shaking before she even opened them. "Mason." I talked to an attorney. She looked up like she had expected tears, not preparation. "You already filed?" I already accepted reality. That line broke her harder than shouting ever could have. She cried. Really cried this time. Or maybe she cried because she realized I wasn't going to spend months fighting for someone who had spent months deceiving me. She said she'd end it with Derek. She said it was a mistake. She said we could go to counseling. She said she didn't want to lose our marriage. But what she wanted no longer mattered. Because she had treated my trust like an unlimited resource. And when trust runs out, love usually goes with it. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved with precision. I told only the people who needed to know. My brother Evan, my lawyer. Our marriage counselor, whose sessions Claire had quietly stopped attending months earlier while lying to me about wanting to work on us. Claire's parents found out when she finally told them herself, probably hoping they'd comfort her. They didn't react the way she expected. Her father called me personally. He didn't defend her. Didn't minimize it. Didn't ask me to reconsider. He just said, voice heavy with disappointment, "You didn't deserve that." That sentence meant more than he probably knew. Because betrayal isolates you. It makes you feel stupid, small, replaceable. And sometimes all you need is one person to confirm you're not crazy, and you're not weak, and you're not the one who ruined everything. Meanwhile, Claire was finding out that fantasy doesn't survive daylight very well. Derek didn't leave his world for her. He didn't become some great romantic hero. In fact, once things got real, he pulled back almost immediately. No more secret excitement. No more stolen hours. No more thrill. Just accountability. And men who enjoy affairs rarely enjoy accountability. When Claire realized he wasn't going to rescue her from the wreckage she helped create, her entire expression changed. She had traded a marriage for an illusion, and the illusion had an expiration date. That, more than anything, was the consequence she never saw coming. Not that I'd leave, that he wouldn't stay. 3 weeks after I served the papers, Claire asked if we could have one last conversation. Not to reconcile, she said, just to be honest. Funny how honesty always arrives late to people who need it at least. We met on the back patio. Evening light. Cool air. Scout lying near my chair, loyal as ever. Claire looked smaller somehow, less polished, less certain, like all the confidence she carried while sneaking around had evaporated. "I ended things with Derek," she said. I didn't respond. He said he never promised me anything serious. Still, I said nothing. Her eyes filled. I was stupid. Yes, I said quietly. You were. That hurt her, but it was true. And truth was the only language left between us. She looked down at her hands. I think I wanted to feel wanted again. Things felt routine with us, and I cut in gently but firmly. Don't do that, she frowned. Do what? Don't turn your choices into my failure. Silence. That was the moment she finally had nowhere left to hide. Affairs survive on distortion. On the story that something was missing, something was broken, something forced it to happen. But lots of marriages go through routine. Lots of people feel restless. Lots of couples struggle. Not everyone lies for months and sleeps with a coworker. That wasn't boredom. That was character. Claire cried quietly. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. No, I said. It doesn't. Then I asked her the question I had saved for last. When you came home from his place and looked me in the eye, what did you think I was? She shut her eyes, and for the first time, I saw shame land fully. Not fear, not damage control, not regret over consequences. Shame. Because there's no good answer to that question. Was I a backup plan? A paycheck? A safe house while she played single in secret? Whatever the answer was, she couldn't say it, and she didn't need to. I stood up. I loved you honestly, I said. That's something you're going to have to live with. Then I went inside. That was the last real conversation we ever had as husband and wife. Divorce is less dramatic than betrayal, and somehow more exhausting. There are signatures, deadlines, inventory lists, awkward calendar negotiations, and the slow, ugly administrative death of a shared life. Claire moved into a short-term rental across town. The house stayed with me. Scout stayed with me too, which honestly told me more than enough about where loyalty lived in that marriage. Over time, pieces of the truth reached other people. Not because I launched some public campaign. I didn't need to. Affairs have a way of leaking into the open once the secrecy dies. At Claire's office, people started talking. Someone had seen them together before. Someone else had suspected. HR got involved after another complaint surfaced about Derek crossing professional boundaries. I never asked for details, but I heard enough to know his reputation wasn't nearly as polished as he liked to pretend. Claire eventually left the company. I heard Derek stayed. Then 6 months later, I heard he didn't. That's the thing about people who build their lives on shortcuts. Eventually, the bill comes due. As for me, the first few months were brutal. I won't romanticize that part. There were nights I sat in the driveway after work because I didn't want to walk into an empty feeling house. Mornings when I reached for someone who was no longer mine. Random afternoons where a smell, a song, a street corner could gut me in seconds. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it rewires your memory. It stains good years with bad endings. But somewhere between the legal meetings and the lonely dinners and the long walks with Scout, something else happened. I got clear. Clearer than I had been in years. I realized how much energy I had spent maintaining peace with someone who was comfortable lying to protect herself. How often I had ignored disrespect because I was loyal. How many red flags I had painted beige just to keep my marriage looking whole. And once I saw that clearly, healing stopped being about getting her back. It became about getting myself back. I started sleeping better, started working out again, started seeing friends I had drifted away from, started remembering who I was before I became someone constantly adjusting himself to avoid another person's coldness. A year later, I looked around my life and realized something unexpected. The worst thing that had ever happened to me had also stripped away the biggest lie I was living inside. That doesn't make betrayal a gift. It makes survival a form of power. If you're expecting me to say Claire begged for me back forever, she didn't. If you're expecting me to say I ruined her life, I didn't. I didn't need to. She did that herself the moment she chose deception over honesty. The consequences she never saw coming weren't revenge in the dramatic sense. They were heavier than that. She lost the man who loved her cleanly. She lost the home we built. She lost the version of herself she probably still wanted to believe in. And in the end, she discovered the man she risked everything for was never worth the price. As for me, I lost a wife. But I kept my self-respect, and when everything was finally over, I understood something that I wish more betrayed people knew. You do not have to scream to be powerful. You do not have to destroy yourself to prove you were hurt. And you do not have to chase closure from the person who created the wound. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is see the truth, stay calm, and let consequences arrive right on time, because betrayal can steal your peace for a while. But if you handle it right, it doesn't get to steal your future too. And the night I caught my wife at another man's place, I thought my life was ending. It wasn't. It was the night I finally stopped living inside a lie.